during election year. So the first year Bill Clinton was running for president, he came into presentation at some big conference hall. And my colleague, Jim, who has pretty significant cerebral palsy and uses a wheelchair, was at this same conference. And Jim needed to use the restroom, and for some reason, his personal care assistant was not right there. So Jim rolled himself into the restroom, and lo and behold, who comes into the restroom but Bill Clinton? Bill Clinton helped Jim use the urinal. Yep. To Jim, it's like, cerebral palsy for me is a normal way of being. Getting helped with personal care issues is just a thing that's part of my life. I've gotten over it by now. And Bill Clinton just stepped right up and did it. So I don't know if that has any relevance to anything. I thought it was kind of cool. I'm actually not going to spend too much time on this right now, but this idea, because we've talked a little bit about it, this idea of recruiting, I use the term allies. People who may not be walking in it may be people who are walking in your shoes because they have a child with Down syndrome or a disability, or it just may be regular community people who could be your allies. It's everybody from your child's siblings to grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, neighbors, people from your faith community, staff like from a place like the Down Syndrome Guild or other experts. So I know we've had a little conversation about whatever school you go to, if you could find other people who are thinking like you to join with you in learning together about inclusive education and then spreading the word. So it's not one person, it's a group of people. And what else was I just going to say about that? I don't think anything. Okay. Don't settle for your child just being there. You want more, right? You want really valued membership, and you really want full participation. Like, it wouldn't have been really great if Adam was in that shared reading activity and all he did was listen. He needed to have an active role. So I'm going to show you a couple of videos. And unfortunately, it's not a child with Down syndrome. It's a child with autism. The lessons are the same. So let me tell you about my friend Jack. I met Jack when he was in just about ending third grade. I'm always called in at these critical times, like, ooh, the IEP is coming up. Let's invite somebody from the university to come and help us. So I learned a little bit about Jack when I first talked to his family and I talked to his special ed teacher, that he had been kind of included in first to third grade, but was still spending, it was mostly for what we would call specials, right? Art, music, physical education. He had not ever been in a regular academic class. Jack has autism. One of his passions was anything mechanical that flies, so airplanes, helicopters, blimps, and so on. He did not use natural speech to communicate. He did not have an effective technology communication device, but he certainly communicated. Everybody communicates. He used this thing called a two-finger point for a lot of things. So he would go up to another kid and go, huh, 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 huh. What could that mean? Hi. Yeah, hi, like you. Happy to be here. He could go, yeah, I'm frightened of something, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I don't like it. He could kind of point to some things he wanted, so, I want to go outside and play. A couple of signs, I think maybe bathroom and maybe drink. But he wasn't using sign language effectively to communicate. He used his voice tone to communicate. He had one of these nasty 9 communication devices, systems, where here were the things he could communicate. Clearly, this did not give him a way to communicate about New Hampshire history, math, right. He got very anxious during transition times. When it was time to use the boys' room, the restroom, it was major crisis time. Hitting himself, hitting other people, going down to the floor, resisting going into the bathroom. One of the most interesting things that I found out about Jack is that he had recently had a bunch of evaluations done, and the psychologist said, even though he was 9, he was functioning at a 2-year-old level. All right, so here's this kid who's 9 in 3rd grade, about to go into 4th grade. What do you think the 4th grade teacher was thinking about the potential of having this kid in her class? Holy crap! I heard another one. I don't want him. What else? Probably can't learn. Disruptive. What am I going to do with him overall? How will I communicate with him? You know, we do 4th grade things. We don't do 2-year-old things, right? So when I was called in, the first thing I did was spend a couple of days observing him, which is what I do when I consult. So I'm going to show you video of what those first couple of observations looked like. And here's just a snapshot of what I saw when I first walked in. Here are the kids, typical kids. There's the classroom teacher. And usually over here to the side was Dottie, who was his aide, his paraprofessional, and Jack. And Jack did have a desk alongside the other kids, but his real workstation was off to the side of the classroom where he had a computer. Do you need to talk to me? Oh, thank you. So the first thing I observed, I got there early in the morning, and I wanted to see what his arrival at school looked like. So first, how much training do you think Dottie, his paraprofessional, had before she began working with Jack? Zero. She is not a bad person. She was told, you know, you're just to take care of Jack and keep him safe. She didn't know. She didn't know. She's not a bad person. When she's given us permission to show these videos, but she says, I just die when I see what I was doing those first few times. So here's now this academic activity, first couple weeks of school. Nope, that's not it. This is. He's 100% in a bubble. What's the point of even being there? What else did you notice? Or give me some specific examples of what you saw as his non-participation. Yes, teachers introducing the lesson, like telling the kids, okay, here's what we're going to do. He's still over at the computer. Yeah, it was actually some sort of a math lesson where the teacher wanted the kids, it was like the 12th of December, how many days is it until Christmas vacation? And some of the kids were using a calendar. So she was saying, how did you figure that out? And Haley counted backwards, and John knew there was 7 days in a week, so he multiplied 7 times 2 and added 3. She's going down the row with the calendar. And again, how many days of training did she have? 0. She's not a bad person. She's thinking to herself, oh my gosh, what am I going to do when I get to Jack? She really is. And so she kind of pulls something out of her hat. She goes, look, Jack, it's a calendar. She doesn't ask him to count. She doesn't know he can count. But you know what he's doing in his little discrete trial thing with his para? He's working with numbers. There's no reason he couldn't have participated, even if he didn't do it perfectly, in counting with a little bit of support, how many days until December 23rd. Teacher hands out a paper, hands out a paper, hands out a paper, twiddles her thumbs at Jack's desk, hands out a paper, hands out a paper. And of course, when his discrete trial, 10 trials is over, Dottie doesn't have anything else to do, so out he goes. Out he goes. Oh, that's right. Other kids were opening their math notebooks. He didn't have a notebook either. And he didn't hand in an assignment. Tell me 6 things that would need to change in order to make this situation work better. They need training. Good one. He needs to arrive when everyone else arrives, You got to show up. That's right. Number 3. Teacher should address him by name. She should not pretend he's like invisible. Yes. And that's so simple, right? Jack. Yeah, okay. Number 4, number 5, another idea? He needs to have something to hand to her as well. And number 6? Pardon me? More included with the class. And what we mean by included is participating in the lesson that the other kids are participating in. Yes? Absolutely. There's no reason why Dottie, the paraprofessional, needs to be right next to him. If he still needs some support counting, there's no reason his friend couldn't just lean over and take his hand if he needs that support as a way to help him count. Kinda. Yeah. That's kind of a distraction. Okay. 1 year later. This is what 5th grade. What'd you see? You're nodding your head? Participation. Other kids seem to include him as well. Did you notice the little girl doing one of these? What has she figured out? He has a modified book, a modified version of the book that still has like the main events and characters, and so she's like, I'll look on Jack's book. What else did you see? Good. The para was, is that what you mean? She was focused, her role right then was to get him to focus on the lesson the teacher was teaching. So every time one of the kids said, well, he ate dinner with the Pigwells, she would just point to where that was in the book. What else? Did you see Jack tapping? Go ahead, tell me. So you think Jack was demonstrating comprehension. And why do you conclude that?
Because he was able to verbalize a response consistent with what they were talking about.
Yeah. He actually wasn't able to verbalize it. He was pointing to it.
But because the teacher included in the very beginning of the class, this is Jack's communication module.
Yeah.
The other kids were watching, and so they picked up. It was the child that picked up on him.
Oh. Yeah, nice. Yes? Oh. Yeah. Yeah. So, remember I told you about he uses the 2 fingers? He kept tapping. Dottie kept trying to, and if you saw it again, you'd catch this. Dottie kept trying to, look over here. He's still looking over at this page and tapping. Now, has anybody heard somebody say that people with autism stim, right? I've known a lot of people with autism who like to flip through books. What what Dottie might have concluded is that Jack was just doing a meaningless behavior by doing that tapping thing, that he liked the feel of the plastic or whatever. But what we suggested to everybody on Jack's team is to interpret all of his communication as having meaning and all of his behavior as having meaning. So his communication device wasn't yet sophisticated enough. We hadn't figured out how he could have his communication device read the sentence that he wanted to say. So Dottie had to be his voice. But she said, okay, I'm just going to say Jack says he lived with a deer and ate what the deer ate. And the kids are like, oh, yeah, right. We missed that one. And the teacher was just like, oh, right, Jack, thank you. So very not, oh, Jack, good boy. Of course, she did, after the lesson, run down to the teacher's room. She's bawling her eyes out. Because the other thing that we suggested to the team is we know that evaluation said he was functioning at 2-year-old level, he can't read, he can't do this. Would you agree for a little bit of time, as we work on Jack's improving his communication system and improving his real access to the curriculum, to just set aside that functioning at a 2-year-old level thing? And they were willing to do that. I couldn't come in and say, you will presume he's competent. People just don't change their beliefs that quickly. But we also had a little something to offer, which is what we did all 4th grade is one of our staff people came into that school one day a week and helped that team figure out what supports Jack would need to communicate about and to participate in what was going on. And another important thing so we had a carrot to offer, which is we'll come help you. And here were our 2 requirements. We actually, if they would have said no, we're just not going to kind of, suspend our disbelief. We would have said, well, it looks like maybe it's not a good match here. You don't look like you're ready to work with us. The other thing that we said is that team needed 1 hour of common planning time a week. I know. And so we worked with the principal and worked it out by shifting people's schedules around and so on. And the paraprofessional participated in that because, of course, she is really essential. Did you have a question? How do I get them to do that? I know. Pardon me? It was a grant. They didn't have to pay. They got free training.
Who brought that up, or who hired you? How do you do that? Yeah. How do you get that? You guys do that like so easy. It's like, why? It could be so easy, but yet it's so hard sometimes. Why do they make it so hard for us?
Well, behind the scenes, Jack's parents were not entirely happy with what was going on. It just so happens, and I know I can't replicate this for all of you. It just so happened our university got a grant. We emailed all the principals and special ed directors in the state, and we said, we have slots for 6 schools to work with. You apply and tell us why we should work with you, and in return, you'll get this. And Jack's parents were behind the scenes because they knew about this because they were members of a family support group to say, look what a great opportunity. How do you get that? Oh, la-di-da. Rich Villa, yeah. Yep. Right.
So you might find out through districts if they're utilizing that grant program. I don't know how you can. So different districts got it because of their, whether they were meeting state requirements or not.
Oh.
I know our district is using them,
Okay.
but they're not fully utilizing.
Okay. So there's this person who's like a me kind of a person. His name is Richard Villa, Villa. He's from California, but I've heard he's working on a grant with the state of Kansas to work on inclusion in certain school districts. So how would they find out like what the name of that grant is? Would they call the state director of special education up in your state capital? Don't tell me, Kansas. Topeka. You can go on the website and find the special ed division or bureau, call somebody in there and say, I need to find out about the project that the state of Kansas is working on with Rich Villa and how my school might get involved. I don't know if you can or not. I don't know if they're only working with certain people. I guess I just don't know the answer, and I wish Amy would or Sarah, you can speak. Do you have any suggestions? I think another strategy might be, so you might say to your team leader, you know us as a family, we have 3 concerns. One is around Jessica's communication device. The other one's about, those friendships are kind of dropping off. And the third is around her reading skills. We know some people at the Down Syndrome Guild who could maybe come in and help us figure that out. Would one of those choices be something that you'd like us, you'd like them to work on first? Some power over the situation, I guess, some choice. Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've actually done that by distance. I don't have much time to do that, but I've worked with families here and there and everywhere where I would review the IEP, just talk to them. Maybe they send me a little, FaceTime video of their child, and then I'm invited to participate in the IEP meeting by phone. And I'm there primarily at the parent's invitation. But it just then, again, it feels maybe not like you're not so much alone during that. So strategy number 6 is to try to structure an IEP that can only be effectively implemented in a general ed classroom. So a couple of ideas and resources around that. I told you on my website I have examples of IEPs that are inclusion-based, both kind of an elementary one and kind of a high school one. It might not match your kid, but I think you'll get the idea. There's also, pardon me, and Sarah, here's another note for you, is I will send you guys the PowerPoint of how to write an inclusive IEP from the first step down to the last, because I've done webinars for different groups about how to write an inclusive IEP. So I can make that PowerPoint available to you guys so you can first educate yourselves. So one of the very first things on the IEP is what are the student's strengths, right? So the student profile. So my friend Janet has a son, Johann. He's now in 10th grade. And she had, when he was back in 6th grade, she had him write a list of the things that he thought he was good at. And she asked that those statements were put in the IEP. I'm a good listener. I do well in biology and anatomy. I have strong social skills. I'm very polite. I do well in groups. Some subjects are difficult for me, but I still enjoy learning. Another kind of examples of this part of the IEP that's all about who the student is, which sets you up for it at least communicates to the team and puts on the IEP the perspective of you as parents about what your child's strengths are, because it's I don't know, hard to argue with if a parent just says, here are the things that I think are a strength for my child. Ronald enjoys music, movement, listening to stories, watching Baby Einstein DVDs, and being involved in the same activities as his classmates. Ronald is a visual learner, despite the fact that he's been diagnosed with cortical visual impairment. He responds best when given sufficient wait time. He's affectionate and enjoys it when they hold his hand or rub his back. He lives with his grandmother and aunt. They are both strong advocates for his health and educational needs. Here's more. Ronald's favorite subject is reading. His attention span to preferred activities is increasing. He's very determined and tries to do his best. That's a very different statement than Ronald has a short attention span and doesn't like activities that are non-preferred. I mean, that may go in the student needs section, but at least you've acknowledged something positive about this kid. I like this one. I like this one. So, Leslie's identification of intellectual disability does not present a comprehensive picture of her as a learner. Her long-term memory is optimized, meaning it's taken advantage of the best, by assuring that all text and other instructional materials are presented during instruction and assessment at her reading and comprehension level, supplemented with pictures, graphic representation, and semantic maps or schema. Leslie's recall difficulties may be due to language retrieval problems rather than the absence of knowledge or conceptual understanding. There's a lot packed in there, isn't there? Yeah. And I was talking with a mom a little bit earlier, and she said, I know what I want for my child. I just don't feel like I have kind of the professional standing or even the language to argue against those 19 professionals sitting around the table, which is why I think the more that you could find some friends or allies to kind of work through some of these ideas before the meeting so that you have them written down. Because I know when my kids were in school, you wouldn't know that I knew anything when I went to their parent-teacher conferences. I was just like a blubbering mess. I just felt so like, oh, I'm only the parent here, right? But if you, and it doesn't have to be this language, but if you could maybe think about it and write it down and have your friend come with you to the meeting, it might help. Any comments about this one? I mean, this in here is more than just an opinion. What do we know about people with Down syndrome? Their ability to verbalize their understanding is inhibited by not only their ability to form words with their mouths, which may have low tone, but by language problems, apraxia, visual perceptual problems. This is not just opinion. This is, it's a way of presuming competence, isn't it? That's a presuming competence statement.
This is my daughter.
There you go.
And I say this
Yep.
all the time. We not only have our annual IEP that we haven't written in our IEP that we have monthly meetings.
Nice.
Because the team wasn't talking to each other, and I'd drive me crazy. I'd go to the parent-teacher conference, and they'd all sit around and they'd go, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I should try
Oh,
that.
boy.
I love that. So, but I never thought about putting it in our IEP this way, which makes it better. So
It does.
we need to figure out how to get that in there because, again, everything you say there hurts. I mean, I would constantly say, there's so much there. If we just get it out of her, she knows. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, we know. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're blowing me off.
And this doesn't say, oh my gosh, Leslie is a Nobel Prize winner in physics. This doesn't say, I know she can read on grade level. This just says that What we know is that her learning and her demonstration of what she knows is supported by providing these things. Yes.
Something else that I noticed about this is it's free of emotion.
It's kind of,
It's just factual.
it kind of is. And
It's not a bad thing.
no. Do you have a section on the IEP, not the parent's vision for the child, but parent concerns? Okay. If there are things, statements, or goals, or things that the school part of the team won't put in the IEP, you can ask them to put it in parent concerns. And I will tell you that if it ever came to a due process hearing, hearing officers look at those things in parent concerns. Let's see. This is just more about Leslie. You can read it on your own. So this is the first part of the IEP, this painting this picture of this student. And being careful that there are some statements in the student profile or even in the results of the evaluations that still leave open this window that maybe those evaluation results are not capturing the whole picture. Some other ideas for writing inclusive IEPs are to write IEPs that focus on those core elements of presuming competence, membership, relationships, participation. So, given visual and auditory cues and physical prompts, Ronald will increase his participation in reading by using a variety of communication skills, including, signing gesturing switches, voice output communication device to make choices and give options. We break that down into a short-term objective for certain students. He'll tell a friend or class what he did over the weekend by activating his step-by-step, which is a little one-hit communication device, through 5 pre-programmed sentences. Ronald is a student who is currently not demonstrating that he is reading. That doesn't mean he cannot participate in a reading activity. Do you get that distinction here? So even if he cannot read himself, he could sit with a buddy. He could listen to the buddy read. He could then use a communication device that had been programmed with, Ronald, what's your favorite part? When Maniac McGee did this, or this. Choose one. Boom. He could just low tech. Just point to it. Pictures. Show him pictures of parts of the book. What's your favorite part? Do you agree or disagree? Who's your favorite character? So there are ways for kids to participate that don't require the same literacy skills as typical kids. With adult and student modeling, Erin will ask conversational and topical questions of other students when working in small groups of her classes. What kind of a goal is that? Under what category? Communication, speech and language. That's right. But you notice how we slip in, and we could say in her general ed reading class. We could say typical peers. Erin will ask classmates for assistance in work groups. She'll complete specific jobs assigned in cooperative work group activities, in classes and in drama club. Leslie. Now, here's oftentimes what I hear from people is they only want to put IEP goals on, they only want to put goals or objectives on the IEP in language arts and reading. They don't want to put like social studies or science goals. Do any of you guys have social studies or science goals? You do. Good. Most people are shaking no. I've worked with students where the school wasn't willing to put something specific about social studies or science in, but they were willing to do this. Leslie will master one big idea, like the solar system is infinite, or the Civil War was caused by disagreements between the North and the South. 5 vocab words and 3 facts within each unit, wrong example, Cheryl, of the physical science curriculum. What that does is that then, again, in my way of thinking, says that somebody's got to sit down prior to each unit and figure out what those 3 vocab words are and 2 facts. What do you think of that? Okay. And so short-term objectives. Now, some parents have asked that when they sit down at the IEP meeting, they actually have the curriculum standards that are from the state right in front of them, or those extended essential elements. Is that what it is for students taking the alternate assessment? The EEs? Do you guys know this language? No. Are your students taking the regular state assessment or the alternate assessment? Okay, then you should be able to go on your state's website or on the website of the company that creates the alternate assessment. And for every grade level and every content area, you will see what are called extended standards or alternate standards that still relate to the main areas of science, social studies, language arts, and math. And some parents want the team to actually go through those standards and get real specific about ones and put those in short-term objectives on the IEP as a learning goal. Other families are just, or teachers just content to let it be up in this kind of broader goal, and then that the specific learning objectives are selected throughout the year as you go along. So what does it take to actually implement with fidelity this nice inclusive IEP? That's obviously there's accommodations and modifications for the kid. There's also support for the team members. So again, how do you get them to agree with this? Relationships, advocacy, showing them research, showing them examples. So gen ed teachers will provide lesson and unit overviews and text to the special ed teacher or the inclusion facilitator and parents 2 weeks ahead of time. I mean, how many times have you heard, parents, we need you to be working on this stuff at home too? Well, what's the stuff? The stuff is what should be upcoming that's going to be taught. Professional development or training on the use of assistive technology will be provided to the team 3 days a year. 60 minutes of common planning time will be provided to the team. 90 minutes of common planning time weekly. In addition to this kind of team meeting with the gen ed teacher, you need to make sure your special ed teacher, your speech path, and your paraprofessional have actual time to work on your kids' educational development of their instructional materials. Do I sound like I'm talking pie in the sky stuff to you? I know.
Okay, so did you present this to the educators? Like, what is their thought on, what do they say about that?
When are we going to find the time?
Right.
So
it's great in theory, but then what?
Thousands of teams across the country have found the time. And in my other PowerPoint, I mean, it's they can find the time if they want to. I hate to say it that way, but if it's enough of a value for them, the team, and if they're willing to think outside the box a little. Here's an example. Somersworth, New Hampshire, fully inclusive elementary school, preschool to 6. There's an inclusion facilitator who named Laura, who only has 5 to 7 kids that she's responsible for. She's a special ed teacher. She has the 5 to 7 kids in this little elementary school who have the most significant disabilities. So a typical group of kids for her would be a couple of kids with autism, a kid who uses a wheelchair with cerebral palsy, a kid with Down syndrome, and I don't know, some other kid. Her only responsibility, she doesn't teach any separate classes herself. Her only responsibility is to support those kids, their teachers, and all those kids' team members to make the kids' inclusion successful. So, I'm sorry. Where did it go? What was the question? Oh, how they find the time. Jeepers creepers. I'm on New Hampshire time. So, the kids arrive at school. They get off the bus at 8:15. Teachers have to be there at 7:30. Their team meeting was once a week from 7:30 to 8:30. 7:30 to 8:15ish, something like that. Unfortunately, one of the paraprofessionals' duties before the certain kids got there was she had bus duty that she had to do every day. So what the team did is they agreed to take one day a week, and classroom teacher agreed too, speech path, OT, and they would meet from 7:30 to 8:20 or so. So they were using some of their contracted time, because the kids were in general ed classrooms, to meet and to plan. And every week, a different team member would take the bus duty. That's what I'm getting to. That's my point here. So even though it was assigned to the paraprofessional, week 1, the para would do it. Week 2, the para would be in the meeting, but the speech path agreed to do it. So every week, one person was missing. But they created their adapted materials and lesson plans on Google Docs so that even if you weren't at the meeting, you could go into the Google Docs. You guys know what that is? Shared document folders, and find out what the team had discussed and what they had planned, and even add your input. So other schools have actually hired a very part-time substitute teacher to come in like the first hour of every day, and that's when those meetings take place. So Monday the sub, gets the kids going in Miss Jones' class, and Tuesday she gets the kids going in Mr. Smith's class. Yes?
How does this concept apply when you go from an elementary school, one teacher setting to a post-elementary?
Brilliant question. How does this work in junior high and high school? Number one, it depends on what the schools look like. So in some junior highs or middle schools, they have kids and teachers on teams. Do they at your school? So a team could be a math, science, social studies, history teacher, and a special ed teacher or a guidance counselor. And oftentimes they'll have several meetings a week, even daily, where they get to come together. They could take one of those meetings a week and do planning we're just talking about the kids with the most severe disabilities for this amount of planning commitment. Here's another way to do it. Here's another way, and this works at high school. I would almost tell you it's virtually impossible. Like if a kid is taking 4 academic classes, it's almost impossible unless they all did it totally before or after school to get all those teachers together because they don't have the same schedule. So the special ed teacher would figure out a way to have, we're talking brief 15-minute meeting a week with each of the gen ed teachers to gather that initial information. Science teacher, what are you teaching next week? What chapter is it? What book is being read? So the special ed person gathers that initial information, right? And then the special ed teacher and the speech path or the para could have their 1 hour of common planning time to then kind of compare what the typical kids are going to be learning and then decide what's the most important learning objectives for the student with significant disabilities. And then share that information back with those classroom teachers. Technology is no substitute for face-to-face collaboration, but you can figure out collaborative ways to do this. You could say to the classroom teacher, once every other week, would you just go into this form that you guys have, actually it's the green form, and just fill out the left-hand column for me? I mean, it probably requires 100 keystrokes, Tell me what the big idea is. Tell me what the vocabulary is. tell me how you're going to assess students. Now that I have that info, now I can plan the specifics for the student with more complex support needs.
So are these Google Docs then, if they're doing the Google Docs,
Mm-hmm.
is that also something they add the parent to so they can look at it, or is it something they just send to the parent later?
I would certainly say that the parent has access to instructional plans on Google Docs. It's not like what these plans are. It's nothing that, well, I can see why some school people might be reluctant, because if you know what they've planned and then you see it not happening, that might be a touchy situation. But I absolutely think that if they're reading Sarah Plain and Tall next week, it'd be great if they could get you the adapted version to go over with your child the week before. It'd be great if you could rent the video of Sarah Plain and Tall with Glenn Close in it as Sarah. Have your child. It'd be great if you could make some flashcards for your kids to, pre-drill that vocabulary. There was another question back. Yes.
Do you know of any parents that actually attend any of those team meetings, whether it's the weekly meeting or the bi-weekly meeting or something like that?
I do. Yep. I'm working with one right now. She actually got her kid included by going all the way to federal court in her region of the country. So there's incentive there to have her, and it's part of her settlement, is that she gets invited to all the meetings and gets to see all the meeting notes. Yes?
Part of our problem is that we have we're from a rural school district where they just, for whatever reason, just cannot keep staff. And there's not enough, and therefore, if I say, we're not articulating, it seems like we need a little more speech goals, we can add articulation and say, we just can't do it. We don't have the time, we don't have the people.
That statement right there, one of their lawyers should be saying, don't ever say that. So what you could say is, I understand that finding a service provider is really challenging. However, this IEP needs to be based on John's individualized needs. And also remember that an IEP is a portable document. If I move to a new school district, I need to document that John has been determined to need speech language services. That's, yes?
Do you have any suggestions on modifying their specials, their electives?
Sure.
Because I see these are core classes, but what happens to us is the children are teaching in their electives and they're not modified, and then they get an A plus for just walking in the room, and that's not reality.
Yeah. So the question is, do I have any ideas for modification of or adaptations for specials? In Julie Costin's, I think in every single one of her books, she has this list of modifications and accommodations. There are some for music and art in this book. The other thing, again, Google is your friend, right? Music plus modifications plus disability, or whatever those key words are, and I guarantee you're going to find some kind of resources out there. If you use those terms, either modified curriculum, modified material, curriculum adaptation, accessibility for students with disabilities in music, you'll probably find some resources. I mean, could you give me one example of where your child could benefit from a modification because a certain special is difficult?
Well, he has computers right now, and the last year in computers, they did nothing. And the parent said, okay, well, let's type SpongeBob lives under the sea.
Okay.
He learned nothing.
Okay. So let's get into that specifically. You guys, how you're hanging in here for this long period of time, I don't know. But what I would like to do is suggest to you that you just read the couple of additional slides that I've put into this packet, that we take a 10-minute break, and then I'm going to walk you through that green form. That is a form that you can share with your team to support them to do the accommodations and participation planning for your child. And Sarah, we're going to make sure, I think that form is going up on the Guild website so that you can download the digital version of the form and email it to your teachers. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and come back.